So this is Daniel Barrett. I'm going to be explaining my multiple sources text set. I'm focusing on Animal Farm, specifically Chapter 8, pages 63 and 64, because I think it's a great little microcosm of what the whole book is about. You'll see here the theme of the unit will be understanding characterization and deliberate choices by an author in order to present a theme. So I really want them to understand George Orwell's purpose for writing this story. I think it's a warning for authoritarian governments and manipulation and propaganda through the language of the ruling class. Which is all very interesting, but I don't want to really reveal this to them at the beginning. I want to give them a little bit of information about George Orwell and Russia, but I want them to read the book and then form their conclusions about how this is an allegory for that after they've got some more information from the book. So the text that I'll be including is The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, because I think it's a great way to kind of showcase how a culture of acceptance or reliance on tradition can be dangerous. The Destroy This Mad Brute poster from World War I to just give an example of propaganda and help kind of give them an understanding of what that is. Harrison Bergeron to show authoritarianism, as well as some authoritarian characters like the handicapper general that I think would be a great addition, a great connection to Animal Farm. And then finally, Lord of the Flies, specifically the section where Simon is speaking to the quote-unquote Lord of the Flies, the severed head of the pig, because I think it's a great way to show how looking deeper beneath the surface of the text is required for fully understanding it, because a lot of these students would kind of be confused about the fact that it's a talking pig when it's really a severed head. So understanding how that's metaphorical and how Simon is kind of going a little bit mad on the island would be, I think, helpful for them to see some examples of how, the answer is not always clearly apparent. They have to look deeper. So we'll start with the standards. We've got reading and writing here. These are the standards that we are focusing on from Calvert County Public Schools. I teach at Calvert High School, so these are the reading and writing standards that I want to be focusing on for this unit. So basically the reading, can they understand the text? Can they cite strong evidence from the text? And, can they determine deeper meaning from the text? Those are the three ones that I really want to focus on. And for writing, can they explain it, essentially, the text? Can they develop a more polished version of it by editing and revising? And can they draw evidence from the text? Since we're going to be reading multiple texts, if they don't really have the ability to draw evidence from the text to explain their reasoning, then I really haven't done my job as a teacher. So now we will move down to the anchor text itself. That's Animal Farm, Chapter 8, pages 63 to 64. So Chapter 8, I think, is really important. It showcases the moment where the pigs are getting drunk off whiskey, and they actually change the original law that I've got highlighted here. No animal shall drink alcohol, to no animal shall drink alcohol to excess. So adding those two words, I think, is really important and showcases a small moment of manipulation that has big ripples throughout the story. We also have some other moments in this section where Squealer is talking to the animals, and we can talk about how that's kind of propaganda and that's, Squealer's job. We can talk about how that connects to real life. We can really get into the language itself, like the section here, which the animals had remembered wrong. I mean, we can go back to Chapter 2 and see that the animals had not remembered it wrong, but the way that this is framed is kind of meant to make the reader themselves question what they're reading and what they had read previously. So it's I think meant to get them to kind of empathize with the animals and how they're being manipulated. So there are other sections of the book that I would love to talk about, but I think for the sake of not making it super heavy for them, that's the section that I'd like to focus on. So the ones or the text that I'd like to connect to that, we'll start with The Lottery. So The Lottery is a short story that follows a town as it prepares for a quote-unquote lottery. I thought this was interesting because the way that it's framed is really normal. they kind of pretend that this lottery is not a messed up thing, and then at the end of the story, the twist ending reveals that this poor woman is essentially stoned to death. Um, and they don't really reveal the reason why. They just kind of imply that it's a tradition, that they would all be very uncomfortable if they stopped this tradition. So that's where that kind of comes from. And I think that connects to the complacency of the animals on Animal Farm and why they might accept something like somebody changing the laws from no animal shall drink alcohol to no animal shall drink alcohol to excess. So this is the story. I've got some sections here that I think are a good indicator of what I was talking about before. Like this section here, the morning of June 27th was clear and sunny with the fresh warmth of a full summer day. The flowers were blossoming profusely and the grass was richly green. It continues on to kind of showcase a very normal day, and they're preparing for what could presumably be like a block party. But then if you keep going, by the end of the story, Mrs. Hutchinson, she's a character that shows up multiple times. She's kind of one of the main characters. She's a little nervous about the day, and it turns out that she is the one that is selected as the sacrifice. And there is kind of a little bit of a argument about this, and she tries to sort of plead for her life. And then towards the end, it just really isn't anything that like she really can't do anything about it. There's nothing she can do. Even her child, little Davy Hutchinson here, someone gave him a few pebbles, so it implies that he's about to throw stones at his mother, really not understanding how messed up that is. So from an outside perspective, we see this tradition as horrible, but if you're part of it, you could get wrapped up and sort of accept something that obviously you should not accept. So I thought that would be a great connection to Animal Farm and their issues on the farm, because a lot of the times people might say, why don't the animals protest this? And I think that would be a good indicator of why they might not protest it. So next we've got Harrison Bergeron by Kurt Vonnegut. Because Animal Farm is a satire, I think it would be a crime not to even mention Kurt Vonnegut. So I wanted to at least include one thing from him. You can't really bring in Slaughterhouse-Five. So Harrison Bergeron, I think, is really approachable. It's really easily understood. So it's a short story. I mean, there's not all short stories are super short, as my students have reminded me again and again. So I think it's got a cool setting. It's got a cool vibe. I think the high schoolers that I teach will be really interested in this sort of dystopian future in 2081. I also think that this section with the, towards the end with the Diana Moon Glampers, the handicapper general, comes in and shoots the two people, the emperor and the empress, as they're dancing around and flying around, would be a great kind of jarring moment for them to help show how authoritarian rule likes to keep down exceptional people. I think we have some examples of this in Animal Farm with the way that the pigs ensure that not everybody is educated to the same level that they are. I think it's kind of a similar thing with the way in this story how they're all handicapped in different ways. You can't, if you're really fast, you have to be slowed. If you're really strong, you have to be weakened. If you're really smart, you have to be dumbed down. So I thought that was kind of an interesting way to get at that concept. Especially with the handicapper general. I think there's a lot of connections that we could make to Napoleon from Animal Farm with his dogs and how he kind of leads with violence and keeps people down. So that was the Harrison Bergeron story. Also, I mean, I don't want to get too distracted by it, but I'd love to just talk about Kurt Vonnegut in general and his contribution to the satire genre. Then we're going to move on to Lord of the Flies. This section here is when Simon is actually talking to the quote-unquote the Lord of the Flies. I wanted to talk about this because I think it talks a lot about morality, corruption, manipulation. Obviously, went too far. Obviously, the pig is a severed head. It's not actually alive, and Simon is kind of hallucinating this whole situation. But I think there's some really important moments here that we could talk about, like how the rhetoric or the language that you're using can affect the way that people read something or the way that characters see certain situations. So specifically, I'd like to talk about this section up here. Simon's body was arched and stiff. The Lord of the Flies spoke in the voice of a schoolmaster. So there's a couple of different moments like this. I think this is the most obvious here. So that's probably what I'll talk to my students about. The idea that you're being talked to by a schoolmaster is kind of you're being talked to by the voice of authority. You should trust the schoolmaster because they're older than you, likely they're more educated than you, and probably they want what's best for you. So I'm assuming the schoolmaster voice is one that comes from a place of care and disappointment. And it's meant to make Simon here feel kind of guilty, or kind of feel like he's being talked down to. And I think that's really interesting because the way in which the pigs in Animal Farm manipulate the other animals on the farm is by coming from a place of authority. Multiple times they say, this is backed by science, like that kind of thing, where they speak from a place of education. 4 out of 5 dentists agree that this is the right toothpaste. Well, most people would assume that it's the best toothpaste because you've heard it from the voice of reason. So if you present yourself like a schoolmaster or like a scientist, then people are more likely to be bamboozled by the manipulation that you're trying to put forth. So yeah, that's Lord of the Flies. I'd love to go through the whole book, but my students read it in 10th grade, so they'll actually recognize this part, so I think they'll be well prepared to have that conversation. And then finally, we have my visual inclusion. I kind of struggled with showing Destroy This Mad Brute or an excerpt from Starship Troopers. I think I'd still like to show a short section of Starship Troopers because I think a lot of high school students would recognize or at least relate more to that kind of movie tone than with just a poster. But the poster is just, honestly, I can't think of a better one or more perfect one to explain just the concept of propaganda as a whole. So we'll just slide over there so I can talk about what I mean by that. So yeah, this is from World War I. This is talking about Germany. The mad brute in question is Germany. It shows a scary gorilla. It's huge. It's coming across a river or some kind of body of water back there with a ruined city in the background, presumably just destroyed by him. He's got a massive mouth with sharp teeth and a red tongue. He's got kind of scary looking eyes. He's got a big German-esque mustache and a very German-style helmet. I'll have to explain to my students that this helmet is something that everybody in World War I would have recognized as German, but we don't necessarily recognize as German. That point specifically is a very German point. And then we have his club. It's got a bloody club. He's stepping over onto American soil. He's got Lady Liberty kidnapped in one arm. And then the language itself, destroy this mad brute. It's a call to action. He's destroyed other cities. He's about to come onto our land and destroy ours. Look how scary he looks. Look how violent he is. Look at what he's doing to the things that we love. So yeah, I think it's a great way to kind of explain how propaganda is both found in visual mediums and in literary mediums. But it's all meant to change someone's mind or manipulate their thought process about something. If you weren't scared of Germany before, after you look at this poster, they're hoping that you will be scared of Germany, and they're also hoping that you'll take up arms against them, that you'll do your civic duty to fight against Germany. Squealer is excellent at this. He's kind of Napoleon's propaganda pig on the farm, and there's multiple moments where he uses fear to control the animals. He actually mentions, if you don't do XYZ, Jones will come back, and Jones was the previous owner of the farm, who all the animals are kind of fairly scared at because he was drunk and neglectful. So he is their version of the mad brute. So when Squealer says you must act in a certain way or else he will come back, all the animals kind of fall in line. So I think that's a great way to showcase how he's essentially doing the same thing that other countries did when Germany started attacking. So yeah, that's my my full text set. That's what I was thinking essentially. I think all of them will help kind of understand or support understanding for Animal Farm. I think the book itself is not super long, so my hope is after we read some sections here that students will actually want to read the whole thing, but we'll see. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I appreciate allowing some late work because I still have to send in my chapter notes, but yeah, hopefully you'll accept those. Thank you very much.